Every single day, people take unwanted or unused items to thrift and antique stores across the country. But as the saying goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and we're here to prove it. Identify valuable things before you throw them away. Join us as we show and tell of treasures found and sold by a full-time reseller with the hopes of helping you find some treasures of your own. Welcome to the What's Sold podcast.
Welcome back to the What Sold podcast. Little inside baseball for you guys. All of our kids have been out of school for the last, feels like forever, Matt. I feel like this year we've missed so much school. We had Snowmageddon the other day. Please don't send anything for Snowmageddon. It's not a real disaster. It was a light dusting of snow. But you wouldn't know that by the school districts in this area that it wasn't the end of the world. So those of you that are in Buffalo or Michigan, Chicago, any areas where there's real snow, we apologize. We apologize for our inability to deal with a light dusting of snow. Our schools were shut for 2 days. So actually it would have been 4 days, right? Because it was over the weekend. Shut down on Friday and again closed on Monday. So both Matt and I have been cooped up with our kids, so we're going a little bit batty.
Yeah, I mean, the irony is that all those places you mentioned, they can have a foot and a half of snow on the ground and they're going to school. They know it. Like like I did when I was a kid. Here's somebody who says, hey, did you hear that they're predicting we might get snow? And they're like, oh no, we better cancel school. Like they cancel it because they canceled this last week. And I went outside, nothing on the ground, nothing was coming all day. It was just cold, which I get. Nobody likes to be out in the cold, but come on, people.
Yeah, there is the bus thing about but most places would do a delay. So the kids aren't waiting at the bus stop at 6 a.m.
They did a delay first,
and then they canceled.
Then they canceled. And I know that they are concerned about kids being out, but most of the time where I see parents at locations where a bus comes, either drops off kids or picks them up, I mean, the kids stay in the car with the parent until the bus arrives. And they get out and they walk to the bus. So I just don't really get it.
Well, there are some places where obviously that's not happening, but one of the problems we have here in Asheville, and so the folks are like, what does this have to do with reselling? I suppose it's probably the problems that anybody has in any urban, semi-urban, rural. Everybody's got these weird problems that are indicative of just them. And our problem, when it snows, they take the entire region into account. So like if you're a kid up on a mountaintop 50 miles away and you can't go anywhere, they shut everything down for that one. It's just wackiness. And they'll say, if I hear another person say, in an abundance of caution, I'm like, look, our life is about caution. I mean, our life is every time we walk outside of our door. I was reading something that statistically, every time you get in your car, it's the highest risk you have. If you look at the statistics across the thing of dying. It's just, they're just innately more dangerous to drive than anything else. So, anywho, whatever. We're just going to complain.
What it sounds like to me is you just don't like to have to be around your kid.
Here's a funny thing. I'm really lucky. My kid's pretty self-sufficient. I give her some work to do. I guess it's the idea that it sure feels like none of the rest of us out there could shut this down.
Yeah.
And as a former teacher myself, I can tell you that there is definitely a time when they're like, woo, we get to shut the school down.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's like a free day. They still get paid.
Nobody loves snow. When you're a kid and you're, so this is for me. I mean, you were up at night, you were watching the news because you were hoping that it would scroll down and you were just looking really, that one's out. Oh, that one's just down the road. Great. Wait, where's my town? Like, why is my town the only one that's not? Yeah. And listen, when that flashed on there, man, I was so excited. And I thought no one else was more happy. But guess who was happier? The teachers. The teachers are the happiest ones.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to be a snow Scrooge or anything. I get it. The problem we've had here, as it's been well documented, is we got hit by 5 weeks of being out of school at the very beginning of the year because of Helene. So when we miss another day, it's a huge impact on us. So
it's tough because especially my son was starting kindergarten this year, and he was in preschool before, so he's used to being in a classroom. However, my kids are in this Spanish immersion thing, so he's being taught in Spanish. Do you know how hard it is to get traction when you're out at the very beginning of kindergarten for 5 weeks, and then they're calling school on days when there's nothing on the ground? Like, come on, people. You know, that's what's difficult.
Sí, mi comprendo.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I didn't take it. I took French. I took French.
I know, I did too. My daughter's always like, "Why'd you take French in school, Daddy?"
Because
And I'm
it's
like,
a beautiful language.
I don't know. It is a beautiful language, but it doesn't. I wish I would have taken Spanish in retrospect. And then I see your daughter, who's like fluent. She's like talking to every person that speaks Spanish. She's like,
well, she comes home now with homework, and she's like, "Hey, Daddy, can you help me?" Sure. Walk up. The instructions are in Spanish. It's a math problem that's a word problem. So it's like a paragraph in Spanish. I'm like, sweetheart, I see 3 numbers. Maybe you multiplied 2 of them? I don't know. I can't tell you. Yeah,
the answer is 9?
Well, this is obvious. You really can't do this? Show your work.
Absolutely. Well, anyway, enough of this chicanery. So this show is rather unique. So we had our very first guest on, who was wonderful, Mary Bicknell, last week, and it was
thank you,
just
Mary.
great. I listened to it. Yes, thank you, Mary, if you're listening. Super helpful. I was talking to my brother, actually, the brother I've referenced on the show many times, who started this little golf business, and he says to me, he's like, well, he goes, he finally listened. He was like the one bad family member. He's like, yeah, I listen to the shows. I really like it. I'm like, bro, I've been telling you this for a year, that this is right what you should be. He goes, yeah, it's great, man. I've learned all this stuff. I could see how it's super helpful. I'm like, well, there you go, dude. And his point was, he's like, I didn't feel like I should listen or need it or whatever, how he put it was, he goes, I'm just selling like 2 or 3 items a week. He goes, but I learned so much in the first 6 shows. He goes, oh, this is the best part. He goes, this would be great if you guys gave some information on what you would do if you were just a part-time seller like he is. I'm like, that was show 43, show 51. So all that to simply say, those of you that are out there listening to us, tell a friend that's reselling. It might be helpful to them.
You do not have to be a full-time seller.
No. In fact, most of you probably are not full-time sellers.
Right.
So we want to just help you with kind of, it was funny. He goes, gosh, I wish I would have listened to this a year ago. I'm like, Rick. Anyway, but you know what? I say better late than never. Welcome to the party, Rick Doble. He's welcome to the party. So, if you get a chance to write a review for us on Apple or Spotify or wherever, super helpful. It also lets other people know. We know there's a lot of other kind of reseller stuff out there that's good, but some of it not so good. So, we hope that what we're doing is helpful and doing good things for you. It obviously helps us because we want to continue to do it. So, have a listen, tell a friend, all that kind of stuff. Now, today's show, like last show, was unique because we had our first guest. Today's show is unique because it's the first show we ever did in the field. You're saying, wait, you guys are in the field, right? No, we were in the field. I followed Rusty / Matt Brock down to a little town called Old Fort. Now, Old Fort was part of the whole, it got hit by Helene pretty hard and everything. Yeah. But there is a estate sale auction house thing there in Old Fort. The guy gets, people come and say, we've got an estate we want to sell. And Matt's like, hey, I'm going to this estate sale. I know the guy. I kind of know what I want to get. You should come. I'm like, that sounds awesome. I'll film it. How hard could that be? Well, let me tell you, people, the scene when the orcs attack the city in Return of the King in Lord of the Rings, that whole series, where they're just hordes of them coming over, that's what I felt like. I felt like I have never experienced anything, personally never experienced anything quite like it. I'm actually going to add some film because Matt's like, hey, listen, here's the deal. We get there. It's cold. We're all waiting outside. There's like 2 lines. There's a line at the front door and there's a line at the back door. And they're sort of like feeding into 2 different sections. It's just one big room with all this stuff in there. And Matt, I'll let you tell you how you know what you know in a second. But I want to give the sort of layman's view of this. So these people are sort of clustered outside the door. And I'm like, there's no line, by the way. It's just a pack of people waiting out there, and there's like a couple guys sitting right in front of the back. We're at the back door, sitting at the back door, and they're in lawn chairs. They clearly have been there. They are not amateurs. This is not their first rodeo. So there's Matt. Matt goes, man, I got here really early, but there were already 2 people in line. So I'm like, oh, this must be a really great thing. And so when we get close to the time to enter, I'm talking to Matt. Matt, of course, by the way, people, there is nothing that you see on Rusty or when you listen to the show that is not Matt. Matt is the way he is at all times. He's talking to people. You're like the mayor of resale town. It's like he's kissing babies,
Oh,
shaking
man,
hands.
waving,
Hey, how you
signing
doing? Good
autographs.
to see you. Hey, how you doing there, Billy? He's talking to people. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like old home week for Matt. So he's making chitter chatter and they're talking, and I'm just kind of watching, and people are asking questions. I met a really, well, we both met, but I got to talking to one of the people that were there who was really interesting. I think we're going to have her on the show because she sells vintage clothing. I was like, oh, that's a cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're standing there, and then it gets close. I don't remember what time, 9 o'clock, whatever it was. The hour of entry comes upon us, and as the door starts to crack open, immediately everybody goes into assault mode. People are like pushing and shoving, like people try to cut in front of Matt. It's like he went from Rusty, the kind carrying, and Matt to like, no, I was in line. It was really, really interesting. So the door opens, people rush inside, and I'm filming this. And by the way, I will add this to the YouTube video, so we're going to drop it right in the middle so you get an idea of what I'm talking about.
Yes, basically. So I'm going to get him to start writing me up a ticket, and then I'll gather some stuff, and we can convene.
The word flummoxed comes up because I'm like, oh, now those of you that are listening in the audience that have been to the estate sale, things like this before, you know what I'm talking about. But it was like, I imagine back in the 80s when the Beanie Baby craze was going on and people were fighting at Walmarts to get the Beanie Baby. That's what it reminded me of. Like people like rushing through and looking for stuff. And it's this big room full of stuff. And Matt's like, hey, listen, I'm going to have to move quick because I know where the things I want are. He wasn't lying, folks. He beelines through that place. And that's the last I actually talked to him. I was like, hey, I'm going to film. I'll try to follow him around in the room. There would be no following anyone around in this room. It was close quarters. It was hand-to-hand combat, and it was one of the funniest, most interesting experience. I'm so glad I did it because I got a sense of watching you work in the wild that was just fascinating to me. So that's the preamble to all this, Matt. Let's talk about what actually happened and what you saw and what's actually going on there.
Yeah, well, you know, I guess it was hubris. I don't know. I told you multiple times I'm gonna move fast. You're like, yeah, okay.
You did. I just thought you were. I didn't think that it was like that. You did warn me, people. He did warn me, but I cannot tell you how surprised I was by the speed of which.
Guys, I was in track. They made a movie about it. It's called The Flash. But no, so I got there not quite 2 hours early, maybe an hour and 45 minutes early. This is a town near my hometown, and this is an estate sale I have been to for a few years now. In the past, it was every 2 weeks, and it's exactly as Brandon described. This whole business is a couple, and they get phone calls from people who have estates that they want to clear out, they want to sell. So they come and pick things up in box trucks. They hire out for help. They get it all in there, they price it all, and then they upload photos about a week to a week and a half prior to the estate sale on their Facebook page. And that's all that people know. They see photos of various items, they don't know the prices, they don't know where they are. And when you go into this place, it's first come, first serve. If you grab it, it's yours. If it's small enough to pick up, there are these holding tables at the front where you can go up and set it there, and that's sort of your pile. If it's too large, then you're just supposed to write your name, like sold and your name on the tag, which works for the most part, but I'll explain why sometimes it doesn't in a moment. But I got there early. It was in the 20s. I mean, it was below freezing. And so it was a cold day, and I've never seen anyone there prior to an hour ahead of time. So I thought I'd be the first one or one of the first ones. I was wrong. There were two gentlemen that got there at 3 in the morning. This place opens at 10, by the way. So I'm sure they just hung out in the vehicle for most of that time because no one else was there. But by the time the doors were open, and they have this set up to where you can be at a front door or a back door, and when it opens, people just go in roughly in the order that they arrived in, and you grab stuff. Now, this particular one, why there were so many people, was there was a lot of jewelry, and there were a lot of watches and watch-related items. So repair pieces and components for watches, both pocket watches and wrist watches. There were 2 estates being sold in there. One, there was a bunch of jewelry. The other one was a man who, this was his job. He was a watchmaker, watch repair person. He had a business for decades, and this was all his stuff. So your average person doesn't have this volume of watch-related stuff. They really had to have a business, which is what I found out was the case. So yeah, that sets the stage. I happened in this case to know where things were because as a result of having been a loyal customer and spent a lot of money there and got to know the owner. And I have purchased, this is the same place, if you've listened to previous episodes, I bought a very large pocket watch collection a few months back. Same place, okay, same person. So when he got into all these watches, he actually called me and said, hey, I don't know if you're busy or not, but I could really use some help with these. You know more about these than I do. Would you be interested in coming down? I was like, yeah, I'll come down and help you. So I was invited about a week and a half before the sale, and I sat there for hours on 2 different days sorting watches, pulling out individual ones if they were made of gold or silver, if they had standalone value based on age, condition, or brand, the maker. I would put together small lots of similar typed items, and myself and another person, we were pricing them. So I helped him with a little bit of jewelry and a bunch of the watch stuff. So in this case, I had been in before the sale. Not only did I know where everything was, I knew how it was priced because I was involved in the pricing. Now, I wasn't pulling anything over anyone's eyes. You know, the man in charge had to agree and kind of told us how he wanted to do it, and we did it that way. And so I just helped him out, just for free, just to be nice. But what that did was it gave me an inside view of where things were and the value. Now, based on the photos, clearly a lot of other people thought that they were valuable too, and they weren't wrong. But I was surprised at how many people were interested in the watch stuff. I knew people would flock to the jewelry because it was a combination of costume and fine jewelry. And I had a tough decision to make. I had to decide, do I go to the front door where I'll jump on the jewelry quickly, or do I go to the back door where all the watch stuff is? And in this particular case, I chose to do the back door. I went for a bunch of the watch-related things. And so that's that. Is there any thoughts, anything else you want me to add or questions before I kind of talk about what that experience was like for me?
Well, the 2 gentlemen you talked about that have been there since 3 in the morning, I felt like they might have been there for 3 weeks. They looked like
haggard.
They were haggard. They looked like this was not their first. In fact, at the very end, as this goes on, you know, at first it's just a cacophonous room of people, but eventually people start lining up to buy their goods and get in line. And I have a little funny story about Matt's goods that I'm protecting, but the last people that were poking around in this estate sale was the elderly gentleman that had been out front at 3 in the morning. Mm-hmm. So like this, I don't know what he was looking for or what he was doing, but it was clearly there was a process in his head about that. So
that group, I overheard him. This was early on, like right when the owner arrived, because we were there before he got in, was asking him basically if he would be willing to sell him large quantities of things as a lot, like before they even went in, which is a tactic that people often use. If it's a yard sale starting at 7:30, you get there at 7. and you walk up and you're like, hey, guy. Or you even send people messages and say, hey, like, do you have any jewelry? I'd be willing to buy large amounts if you let me look. People are always trying to get an in, try to get there quicker, try to get a deal. And this gentleman didn't realize, but this guy hears this all the time. He's offered to do that all the time, but that's not what's good for business, because if he photographs a bunch of things and says, hey, these are available to the public, people get there early, walk in and say, hey, where was this jewelry collection? He's like, oh yeah, somebody offered me, I sold it already. That's not good for business. That angers people. So he basically told him, like, no, I'm not going to do that. You go in just like everybody else, and whenever we open the doors, and you're going to compete just like everyone else does. So that's exactly what happened. When the doors opened, people started rushing in. I went in as well. I had one thing I was targeting first, which was one sort of an accordion-style case that was full of pocket watches. And most of them were automatics from like the 50s to the 70s, and a lot of them worked. I ran in. I went to that fast. I said sold on it, and I put my name, Matt. I then ran to some other lots and stacked up probably 6 or 8 little lots of other watches and watch-related things. At that point, not ran, you can't really run in that place, but I made my way as quickly as possible up to the front. Now, to give you an idea, I did this in less than a minute. In less than a minute, I got in, put my name on 2 or 3 things, grabbed 5 or 6 little cardboard boxes of stuff, and I had also brought a black tub with me to put things in so that it was easier to carry. So I grabbed all those, I stuck them down. They're all individually marked. I get up to the front, and there were probably 4 folding tables completely full on top of different lots of jewelry, mostly costume, but there was various other things as well. When I got up there, it was bare. In less than a minute, the people who came in the front door had cleaned out, grabbed up, scooped up all the jewelry. I did manage to get some higher-end things, silver and gold, that was behind a case. So I bought like a Art Deco diamond, probably a 1/2 carat single diamond ring, a white gold ring. I bought an 18 karat topaz ring. I bought various cameos and other really cool antique jewelry. I spent about $2,100 on everything that I got.
I spent $5. I bought a North Carolina, because I technically wasn't even supposed to buy anything, but I found this really cool North Carolina chapel, or UNC North Carolina like plaque that a friend of mine who loves that team. So look, I was part of this.
Yeah,
I was
great.
part of the sell.
Yes,
I'm
you
a
were.
reseller. Well, actually, I'm not a reseller. I'm a buyer. I'm a rebuyer.
But you should have seen me. I was running around. I was tapping him on the shoulder. By the time he turned around, I was gone again.
Totally.
He didn't know what was happening. So I get the stuff, and now I've got everything, right? I know I've got everything that I want to sell. Some of it's up front, being at my, the table where it holds stuff. And then I went back when I knew I couldn't get any more jewelry to try to pick off other stuff in the watch area that no one had bought yet. I'm looking through, and I'm putting my name on a few other things. And when I know I'm done, I go back there to try to start to ask the guy in the back to help me like total things up. I go back to the thing that I put my name on first, and it's gone. So the accordion style case that had all these watches in it, it's not even there. Now I put my name on it. That was the very first thing. That was the thing I was targeting. So I immediately look around. I don't see anybody holding it. I alert the guy, hey, listen, I put my name on this. Somebody grabbed it. He helps me walk. We walk around the entire building inside. It is nowhere to be found. I don't see it on the ground anywhere. I was like, oh no, somebody grabbed this, swapped tags or something, sold it or bought it and left before I even had a chance to do this, to grab it. This is not the first time that's happened. The time before I went there was this wooden shelving unit that I put my name on. Same thing. By the time I got the majority came back, it was gone. And I never saw that again. It was gone. I don't know who bought it. But there's, you have to be careful, because as honest as most people are, some people aren't. Maybe a person wanted that and just decided, you know what, I'm going to try to get away with it. So I go through, I get everything else totaled up. But I did let the owner know, like, hey, this happened. Somebody, and he was just like, oh, I'm sorry, man. I'm talking about it. I mentioned this to Brandon, that it happened. And I had another little stack of things in the watch area. And I was like, dude, I'm going to start buying this stuff. Would you mind just standing here and watching this? Because I don't want it to happen again, right? And I don't know if you fully knew everything that was going on at that point or not. But you're just like, yeah, I'll stand here. I'm kind of having a conversation. I'm in line, maybe halfway through the line to go pay. A guy walks up and says, hey, man, I think this is yours. And he brings this case. It's all folded up. I wouldn't have recognized it all folded together. But he opens it up and pulls it up, and there it is. And there it is, my little tag on it. It has my name on it. And he claimed, like, listen, I just grabbed it. I didn't see the name. I just folded it up and took it, which may be the case. But either way, he heard me talking about it, and he was honest, and he brought it back to me. So I did end up getting it, and I was very happy. All in all, okay, I got pocket watches, I got watches. I ended up coming home somewhere in the range of 400 to 500 wristwatches. Probably at least 350 of those are men's watches. The rest are women's. No solid gold ones. A couple of sterling silver ones. Did have a couple of decent branded ones, but the rest of them are kind of your typical branded watches, like Elgin, Waltham, Gruen, Hillbros, like a lot of these ones that were very common back in the 60s and 70s. And a lot of them are automatics, which means they don't need batteries. You just wind them. You set the time, you wind them up, and then they keep time. And do I know how well the time they keep? No. I mean, all I'll know when I wind it is if it is functional or not. So when I go to list these, I'm going to list them in groups or individually. I'll note if they are running or if they are not running. But even with the ones that are running, I'll say it may require repair, but it is operational. So I feel like with $2,100, I'm going to do pretty well. I mean, I have 350 of these men's watches. And most of these in operating condition sell anywhere on the low end, $30 a piece. Average more in the $50 to $60 range. Some of them over $100. So if we just split the difference and say I have 350 watches times $50 per watch, we're in the multiples $8,000-$9,000 at this point for just those watches, and that's not including the gold I bought or the silver or the jewelry. So I think with a $2,100, cost on everything, I'm going to net at least $6,000, maybe $7,000. So I'm going to quadruple my investment, if not more, and that's a lot. When you're spending thousands and you quadruple, that's a good payday there. It's just going to take me time to research, photograph, list them, that kind of thing.
So
let me do this.
Wow, look at that, Matt. Well done. A box of jewelry.
I mean, just watches, some nice.
Well, this is the idea of the lot you always talk about, though.
That's exactly right. A little bit of everything in here.
Nice. All right, we'll throw this up on the show.
We'll check it out.
All right. Yeah, it's interesting because I've mentioned this before. I'm a pretty big guy. I played offensive line in college. I'm a large lad. I'm tall, and I take up a lot of space sometimes. And my wife is tiny, and
sometimes
I always have to remind her that's like, hey, I can't really go stand in the middle of this crowd because no one can see behind me. So yeah. I'm sort of aware of that, my physical size. And Matt puts me in front of this box, and I kid you people not, at least 20 people were like, hey, they're trying to get around me to get into this box. And it has his name clearly on it. And I'm like, sold. So they're like, oh, it's sold. I'm like, well, yeah, see the names all over. Like, I don't know any of this protocol.
I'm the bodyguard of this
and I don't know.
Right
and they joked about that. Like, I guess you're, but I am convinced that people would have just taken that. Everything 100%. That was in there. So I thought it was really interesting that how hard it was to just keep the things that you found that were good in this box of stuff that I was looking at. I kind of opened it up and looked at it. Clearly, this was somebody who had a watch shop or something that you bought this from, because there were still price tags from like the 60s on these watches. And they were all like just the wristbands. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I got the sense, and please correct me if I'm wrong and maybe educate the audience, but I felt like there were about 3 of you in the room, professional resellers who like really know what they're doing and are going through and like kind of like, and then there was a whole secondary level of people that are just good at sharpening elbows and want to get in there and hoping that they find something good. Sure. There were a lot of people in there that were just like, oh, there's an estate sale, I'll go poke around and see. There was a lot of people that were just sort of having a day out and walking through the estate sale. Is that roughly kind of the makeup of that crowd?
Yeah, a lot of people come out and they're just like, oh, I'm just, seeing what's here. They don't really have a specific thing. Most people have a specific thing. Like, I'm here for jewelry, or I'm here for watches, or I'm here for whatever else. Yeah, there aren't that many full-time resellers out there. There's way fewer than part-time people. And then, you've got collectors, people who they see that they got a bunch of tools. They're like, I'm gonna see if there's a tool I can use. People come who work and they need tools. Like they work with tools. So like, it's cheaper. It's going to be a better quality because it's old steel. It's been used and it's, or they're like, I deal, like one guy in front of me was like, I deal with mid-century modern furniture. So I'm here for tables or chairs or things like that, specifically that style. And you can get really good deals at places like that. You buy 6 chairs or 8 chairs for $200 and they're worth $2,000 because that's the style and they're, original. So most of the time, that's what I see is people who they're retired. This is just what they do for fun. They've got disposable income because kids are grown up and out of the house, or you know what I mean? It's entertainment for them. They're not usually the ones that are there at 3 or 4 in the morning. Those are pickers. The people who get there early, it's like this. They go there because this is what they do. I've once been at an estate sale where I stayed up all night. I stayed there all night. I brought a sleeping bag and stayed out there all night, and it made sense because I spent about $2,200 that time, and I made about $15,000 in sales. So was it worth sitting out, cold and not sleeping real well that day? Sure, I took a nap later the next day.
Right.
So sometimes it's worth it, but most of the time, these people they either don't fully know what they're looking for, they don't know where they're going, and if I'm fast, I'm gonna beat them. Usually what happens is at this place on a normal day when there's only like 6 people in line and I'm the first or second, I go in the front and so they'll come in and like, oh, jewelry. And they kind of stand there like looking. Meanwhile, I'm just grabbing boxes and just putting them, stacking them. And I'm just grabbing them. And then they get this sense of like, oh no, I guess I have to go fast because if I gawk too long at this thing, he's going to clear this entire table. And people don't like that. I get it. But also, this is what I do. Like you happen to walk in where I'm working. This is my job.
Right.
You're having fun, but the time is of the essence here, and that's sort of the name of the game.
And I was going to say that about, when I said different layers of people, the show is for people that resell and for people or people that are doing a small business or anything like that. Hopefully it's not just people that are resell, but there are different stratas of life out there. And I was thinking to myself, if I was just somebody that was kind of doing it part-time, I'll take my brother, he wants to get golf clubs, I probably would not go to this estate sale. I was talking to this, hopefully you're going to have this woman on who sells vintage clothing because she was fascinating. She owns 2 vintage shops, and she was talking about the processing, that COVID created a lot of this. She says, I rarely go to these anymore because I just deal with vintage clothes, and that's a whole subset of itself. But she's very specific. You're pretty specific. You know what you want. You've thought about it. But for most people that are looky-loos, they're just going in there like, oh, that might be good. I don't know if that's the best place for you if you're a reseller. You would probably be better off having lots of conversations in your neighborhood with people. It's like, hey, if if I'm selling stuff, if you have anything you want me to get rid of, be happy to get rid of it for you. I think you could make that a pretty good side hustle. But if you want to do this full time like you do, and like this woman who said, it's a job. And it's really about being aware of the system. So you were talking about the people that were looking at the jewelry there. Hey, that's not what that estate sale is about. The guy that runs that knows that person will buy one thing, whereas suppose you'll buy hundreds. Years ago, I worked for a whole electrical wholesaler. I was in their executive training program. I was right out of college. It was a great starting point for me. Platt Electric in Portland, Oregon. For shout out to Platt. I don't even know if Platt Electric still exists, but they were a wholesaler. And I remember, I had a boss there, and I really liked him. He was a good. I don't even know how to explain him, but this one day it was a wholesale counter. So the people that would come in would be electrical contractors who were buying like 500, pieces of EMT pipe, or 7,000, electrical outlets or whatever in bulk, or they were coming in every day and they would buy whatever they needed for the job that they were on. So they might not buy a ton of stuff that day, but we knew we saw the same guys every day. They'd come into the wholesaler desk, they'd buy whatever. We were a wholesale house, so we were selling the stuff that these contractors. But it didn't mean that we didn't allow people from the public to come in. And I remember this one day, this woman comes in and she starts talking. I'd been there for maybe 3 months, I knew enough to be dangerous. And she starts talking, and I'm like, hey man, you got to solve the customer's problem. Customer's always right, so I'm trying to solve a problem. It's like I get this tap on the shoulder after about 20 minutes, and it's my boss. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. This lady needs help. I'm trying to help. He goes, she's not our customer, dude. That lady's never coming back in here again. You've spent a half an hour when we've had 15 contractors in here. That's our customer. You need to say to her, hey, I'm sorry. His point was a little gruff, but I'll never forget. It was a great lesson. Same thing for that woman that was coming, or that man, or whomever that was, that was looky-looing. Hey, listen, you're not that guy that owns that estate sale place. His customer is you. It's Matt. It's the reseller. It's a person that's going to come back, that's going to spend thousands of dollars. It just makes simple sense. So just, I guess my point is, be aware of your surroundings. Don't be like me with this 70-year-old lady trying to find one toggle switch that, hey, listen, go to Ace Hardware. They'll be able to help you.
Well, and he tells me, I mean, they price things well. They do. They price them so that someone like me can buy it and make money on it too. But they have volume. They need to move it. And he says, I don't want your money just this time. I want your money every time. Like, I want you to come back. So as long as he keeps putting out things that are desirable, that I know I can sell, and as long as that they're at a price where I know I can make money on it, I will continue to go there. And the more of this relationship that develops, who knows what'll happen. But that's exactly what I do. And also, to your point, and I think that this is a great way to start, or and get your feet wet if you're just doing it part-time, is you can start with friends, or you can start with people that you know around you. Sell things for other people. I'm doing more and more of that. I started last year. Word of mouth is starting to get out. I have probably, actively 4 or 5 different individuals or groups that I'm selling for. And with the volume of stuff I'm getting, it's about 50% of my work right now in January. Now, where will it be by the end of the year? I don't know. But I like that because I don't have to waste time looking for things. And it's a 30-day window. I tell them when it sells, I have 30 days so that I'll pay you once a month. I got to make sure it doesn't get returned. But it's easy. I get this stuff, and every time they get a call from me or a text from me, they're excited because it means they're getting money.
Yeah. What do you do if something of theirs does not sell? I mean, I'm sure you drop a contract with them, right?
Yeah. And if they ever want it back, they can have it back. And I always tell them, like, listen, I start your stuff out. I do the research. I always start it out higher than the average sale for the first month, hoping that somebody will bite and you'll get a really good deal on it. Because, listen, the more money it sells for, the more money they can make and the more money I make, because I'm just taking a percentage. And so I'm incentivized to work as hard as possible, make a good listing and sell it for as much as I can. If they have some sort of a time frame, like I'd like this stuff sold by a certain time, that will change my strategy. But if they go, listen, I'm not in a rush, then I'm like, great. I'm going to do it at this price in the beginning. If it doesn't sell, I'm going to lower it. If it doesn't sell, I'm going to put it with something else, or I'm going to put it on auction a little bit lower until we find that buyer at the right price. And they understand that. Like, they look at me as, you're the professional. You do this day in, day out. If they have guidance, if they have certain things, I have to make this much, or I just want to get it back. I get all of that figured out before I ever do anything so that I don't disappoint them. But then after that, it's just like, well, we're just going to keep in communication. I'll let you know when things sell and let you know when there's a payout, and we just go from there. And I've had, with individuals, I've had only good experiences so far.
Yeah, I'm convinced that's a really good model. And the reason I say that is, so we bought my daughter a Nintendo Switch gaming console last year, and she didn't play it. The only person that played it was me, and I was like, this is ridiculous. A grown man playing it. Kids. Anyway, it was like, I know some people have self-control. I do not. So we sold it. We had all this stuff. We spent, $300-$400 on all this stuff. So I sold it. It took me a month to sell all this stuff. And I cannot tell you. Now, to be fair, I sold it on Facebook Marketplace because it's the easiest. I posted it up there. But we've talked about what Facebook Marketplace is, so I won't go back into that. But I had somebody last week, I put this little carrying case on there. It probably cost $30 when we bought it for the Switch. I have it priced at $10. Now, I could just use this carrying case to carry other things, but it has like Zelda on it. So I'm like, maybe some parent wants it for Christmas. $10. I had it for $20. I lowered it to $10. Somebody DMs me the other day and it's like, $5?
Will you take $5? And you're like, get out of here.
I'm just like, I won't walk across the street for $5. It's not
That's
worth,
right.
literally not worth it for me to even deal with you.
I'll take it
Not
down.
that
I'll take it down and laugh while I'm burning it. That's more fun than
and
$5 from you.
or I'll give it to a friend who has a Switch. Like,
Right.
But my point being is, if you're in a neighborhood somewhere, I'm thinking about people around the country that are doing this. Maybe you're retired. Maybe you just want a side hustle. To start a little, a business like this, where you just kind of go to your neighbors, say, hey, I'm going to sell this stuff. I would recommend setting up a contract, even if you're friends with them, just to lay out what you're going to do, because I can tell you that, they're like, wait, what? You got 30% and I got, yes, because I'm not doing it for free.
Mm-hmm.
And, it takes time, and I'm probably making less than I would have anyway. But I think it's a really great side hustle if you do it. And that's why, as much as I am not a fan of eBay, I think eBay is probably a really good place to do this, because you go, you put it on, the system, you figure out how to put things on auction, and you can actually make a little bit of money and then help a friend out as well. Or maybe a neighbor that maybe there's an elderly neighbor that wants to get rid of stuff. Seems like a good plan.
The most buyers come to that platform, and that platform's interface, their user, platform is pretty easy to learn, and there's more complicated things and stuff in the background tools and things you can use if you want, but you don't have to. And so just to start just a little individual store and sell things out of it, super easy. You can be the kind of person that likes the hunt and wants to go out to stores and pick and find individual things, thrift stores, antique stores, yard sales. You can just start with your own things and get a taste of that, then sell for some friends, and then, or just, listen to this, watch some of the Rusty videos or whatever about different categories of things that have value at thrift stores or this and that, and then get your feet wet. You don't have to go all in. Don't quit your day job,
Right.
Rely on the income that you have. But once you start selling enough that you're like, I wouldn't have to do much more of this. In fact, with the amount of time that I spend currently, let's say I spend 5 hours a week, and this is what I bring in. So you can do that calculation. Well, if I increase that to 20, or if I increase that to 40, what am I going to bring in? Can I live on that or not? And I've said it before, I think you should save at least 3 months worth of your monthly income before you do this, just to, protect yourself and guard, and also have some cash available to buy things if you're going to do that. But that's just if you want to do it full time. I had, I had about 20 years of part-time experience doing it before I ever did it full time. So never intended to do it, but then here we are.
And the other advantage of selling things for your friends is you don't have to pay the money up front. So you get the good, and you put it, and it's like a kind of a win-win all the way around.
There's no cost of goods for you.
No, exactly.
Right.
And so it's a nice little side hustle. And like you said, and Mary talked about that last week, our guest Mary, about, don't quit your day job. Really be careful, unless you're retired and you can do it.
Yeah.
But think about it before you go into it. It's interesting. We have I'll call her a cousin of the show,
okay,
a friend of the show, whatever. Yvette. She's emailed us a couple times. I've emailed you back, Yvette. You haven't responded. I don't know if you're mad at us or what, but we wanted to bring Yvette on because she's brand new to selling. So if you're brand new to this and you're just getting started, maybe you've been doing it for 2 or 3 months, shoot us an email at whatsoldpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know if your story is interesting, like Yvette, who I haven't heard back from. But if it's interesting, we'll bring you on the show and talk about it, because we really do want people to hear other people's stories. That's the one thing I took away from the estate sale that I found fascinating. And the reason why you and I are friends, probably, and we do this show, is that we both like to talk to people. But I was chatting people up in there, the ones that would chat me up, not the ones that were throwing elbows at me. And it's amazing the various and myriad amounts of people that are there that are doing it for different reasons. And I thought that was really interesting. And so we want to hear those stories and share those stories. So if you are doing that, let us know, and we'd love to have you on the show.
Yes. Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right. So Matt, we are almost up on time, as always, but any last thoughts before we head out of here? Thank you so much, by the way, for inviting me to the Land of Chaos at the end of Crazy Lane. That was super fun.
Of course.
Look for the video of that. But any last thoughts you have for us?
Well, only that, it is, it's tax season is about to be upon us. And I just want to say that if you're using eBay, or you're thinking about using eBay, it's very easy to get QuickBooks. QuickBooks, you can either pay monthly or you can pay annually. You get that. That can be connected directly to eBay stores and to your bank account. And so it's very simple to get things started. You get QuickBooks, you link them, and then you have 3 different places that's tracking your purchases and your sales. You have a bank statement, you have QuickBooks accounts, and you have eBay, which will send you your sheet that gives you the gross sales and all of that. So it's a very simple thing to do. If you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself and you have an accountant, it's very simple for them to set up. But maybe this year's the year. You just start it simply. You take care of that accounting piece so that you don't have to worry about that. Keep your receipts when you buy things, and you're going to be in a good spot. It's 2025. It's a brand new year. There's no reason why you can't take that first step, at least. You don't have to tell a bunch of people. Like Mary said, you don't have to worry about people thinking you failed or whatever. Just get your toes in. Try it out.
Yeah, see what happens anyway. Great word. Remember, guys, to follow, like, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. Otherwise, we will be back with a brand new show next week after Matt gets back from his 15th vacation of the year to Mexico City. Very excited for he and his wife. But we will be back with a brand new show. Have a great week, everybody.
Take care.